afternoon, friends. It's a little hard to speak on a subject like this after you have heard the policy of the Government of India, the perspective of service providers, technology providers, and you heard the ground level experience, the pleasures, the pains, and the woes of people who have actually worked in the government at the cutting edge in terms of actually using these technologies to deliver the services. And obviously I don't want to repeat what has been said, and I think in one sense that has laid out all the dimensions of cloud in the space of government. So at this juncture, let me step back a bit and present a perspective which I believe is particularly relevant in India, not only to the government and to the delivery of government services, but indeed to our very capability as a country to leverage these technologies and in a sense become a leader across the world by building on the strengths which we already have. So let me explain what I mean. It's often been said that in this era we are now witnessing the democratization of technology. And what does that mean? The example which we are already all very familiar with in India is the advent of the mobile telephony and how the cost of usage kept dropping dramatically from a level of about 30 rupees a minute to a level of 30 paise per minute. And similarly, the cost of the devices also came down, and today you can get devices at sub 1000 as a handset. And when you're talking about things like using a handheld device, a Kindle-like device, then we are talking about a tablet like Akash for a sub $50 variety. So the point is that all of these have brought down the cost to a level where even in a country like India, which is not very well developed economically, is beginning to make financial sense in terms of what is the value getting delivered and at what cost. So if we try to fast forward 5-6 years down the road, where we can imagine a situation where everybody has some kind of a device which they can use, hopefully in a language of their own, hopefully whether you know how to read or write, as long as you know how to speak, you can still get the kind of service you want. And through this, you have access to various kinds of services which today are basic to life and to the dignity of life, whether it is a good quality of education or a reasonable level of health services. And I have been in the government long enough to know that this is not going to happen by government programs alone. It's going to happen and can happen, and that possibility is very real today. But it requires a complete paradigm shift in the way that we do things. And I think we heard some of the earlier speakers, and Rajiv Agarwal in particular, in terms of how a little tweak in the paradigm by which things are done has made a big difference in Maharashtra. That is with just one step where a department and an individual in a department is able to make that impact. Again, I've been in the government long enough to know that that is like the conjunction of the planets. It does happen once in a while, not that it never happens, but then if you count on that, on providing a lasting and pervasive solution, then God bless you. So what is that paradigm shift and how do we make use of that, and what is the linkage between the democratization of technology and cloud technologies? And I think it's here where we have to also step back a moment and look at not only the government but also how the Indian industry has grown today. And today we have an industry which we can really be proud of, and indeed the country is proud of, and it has become the calling card across the world. And I won't bore you with all those statistics, and I haven't come to peddle how strong the industry is. But a 30-second background is relevant for the point I'm going to make. So what I want to mention is that we have an industry which today has a $120 billion turnover, maybe that is about 700,000 crores last year, and still growing at 15%, where the domestic economy is currently growing at below 5%, global economy at below 4%, the resurgent US economy at below 4%. And even global outsourcing is growing by only 7 or 8%. So we have a really, really strong IT industry which are world beaters and which today command a 52% market share globally in terms of global sourcing. Is that something that we can be proud of, and is that something that represents the best? And I think the even more exciting part is not just the statistics of size and scale and capability and global share which has been reached, but the emergence of a very, very important component of that ecosystem, which is the whole startup and innovative part of the industry. Today, that portion accounts for less than 10% of the revenues of this industry. Less than 10% of this $120 billion or 700,000 crores come from this segment. But it, in fact, accounts for 99% of the number of companies which are operating in this sector. Many of them are very smart, very bright, young people, each of whom looks at the queue in some place. The name change office that Rajesh spoke about, or the queues outside a cinema hall, or the patients from a village trying to go to a hospital or reach a doctor. They see all these problems around, and many of them are young and therefore not willing to accept that this is how it was meant to be. And they say this has to change. These are the same people who in other countries pick up stones to throw them at, some institution of governance and cause an Arab Spring or whatever kind of revolution. But there are also people who, apart from having that kind of energy, also have another quality, which is the understanding of technology, a deep understanding of the democratization that hasn't happened in technology, and how, as a result of all of these developments, it is today possible for even a couple of young people, and when I say young, I don't necessarily mean in age, I mean in the thought process. And I'm sure you can understand why I'm preferring that definition to merely age. But the fact is that these are people who are also armed with that understanding of technology and are able to combine this impatience and dissatisfaction with the technology to find solutions. And so the point I'm making is, if we can turn some of that energy to looking at all of these problems and trying to help us to find solutions and define those solutions, a lot of this revolution that has been talked about, the scale, the speed, can actually be achieved by using the skills of these young people. But that requires us to leverage this development and this convergence of the way in which technology has developed the manner in which this ecosystem and this capability has developed in the industry, and the policy and vision of the government which has been so well articulated. This is, I believe, a unique window of opportunity for the country to evolve a fix for a lot of these problems in a manner which will both solve the problems as well as launch us into a different orbit in terms of being a provider for such solutions. At the same time, I think while trying to create room for such innovative entrepreneurial companies to come up with these kind of solutions, and that too in most of the cases without any cost to the government, and many of these, as we heard earlier, are amenable to subscription models, they are amenable to service delivery models at very, very nominal costs. And therefore, from the government perspective, you need not even get into a problem like getting into a complex RFP or getting into a heavy amount of capital expenditure, or even for that matter a recurring expenditure. People are not only prepared to spend the time to fill up their forms and do the data entry, but also in some cases they want the service. Paying a nominal fee of a few rupees, 2, 3 rupees or 5 rupees is not a big deal. In fact, it's a huge saving for the people. So a lot of these things can actually be brought together by government figuring out ways of how to put all this together in a manner which makes sense to the citizen. The cloud and these technologies offer a unique opportunity to do that. At the same time, there are a certain set of concerns which is where government should focus on and be able to come out with policies not only which enable the vast amount of innovative technical capabilities which have been built in India by people whose biggest problem today is that they don't have a market. They can see a problem, they can see a solution, they can see the revenues, they can see people who are prepared to pay for it, but they have no way to connect to that. And that can only be done through a forward-looking government policy. And that is part of the overall recommendations which we have made to the government in terms of what can be done by the government to lead India into the digital India that is being talked about. So about the concerns that I was mentioning, there are also counter trends across the world where people are looking at the cloud and the data and various concerns with regard to security and privacy and so on. In some countries, this takes extreme forms of insisting on, for example, rules with regard to data localization in Europe, saying it has to be, sitting in a server in the local area. And everybody who is in IT knows that, you can be sitting on top of the server yourself, but your data is no more secure than it is from the person who's actually handling that data. But then these are trends which are brought about, and there are concerns with regard to privacy as well. So from a governmental point of view, where government has the responsibility for the data in many cases, a distinction has to be made between the kind of information and the kind of responsibility which the government bears, and how much of this can be actually enabled through the democratization of technology route and through the tapping of innovation, so that you are able to unleash the power of this segment of the industry to design solutions for the people who want to use these services. So finding the right balance between the quantum of security or privacy that is required for the data and how much you need to control and where this data goes. And if you refer to the earlier presentation, there was talk about the private cloud, the public cloud, and the public-private cloud. And some of these, for example, the areas of education that I talked about, are areas where it really doesn't matter. You don't even need to have it sitting inside a government cloud. It can actually be sitting anywhere, because the intention ultimately is to make it freely available. we have a law which says you have a right to education, and therefore any information which is or content which is created under that, obviously it doesn't even matter where it is located. And if once those services are available across the globe, it doesn't even have to be anywhere, not just under the government, but anywhere in the country either. So a more discriminating approach to really look at the different services and see which services can be directly opened up for the innovation capability that is there in the private sector is, I think, a very important aspect of that, and creating a framework in which people can develop those applications and both provide services as well as create an opportunity for themselves out of it and create a product. Let me give you one other example. I think one of the key changes that we have been seeing in the last couple of years, and more so in the last few months in the run-up to this election, has been a much greater democratization of politics in general. And I don't mean by politics only political politics, but by politics I mean the whole basis of mobilizing people around any cause. It can be a social cause, it can be a political cause or whatever. And the use of social media in that has therefore become a very key aspect of it. And as in the run-up to the election, we saw that it was a major tool today in political mobilization. But the question is, can it stop with social mobilization and political mobilization, or does it also have to become a part of governance itself? And how do you enable citizens who today demand and want to be more engaged in government to also be a part of that by creating such an engagement platform? And again, these are areas where the innovative capability, the technology and cloud can actually enable a lot of these solutions to come up, and they don't need to go through the conventional route by which government thinks of a project, government architects a project, and then goes through a very complicated process of inviting RFPs and execution. These are areas which actually the industry is perfectly capable of doing today. All that we need to do is to find out a way to harness it. Even the government doesn't even have to necessarily pay for any of these things. So I would certainly think that from the perspective of the industry or from the perspective of the government, but much more importantly from the perspective of the citizen, this is a golden opportunity for the country to be able to leverage all of these developments, and for us to put our heads together and think through how all of these can actually be brought together, most of which requires more of policy decisions and changes in the processes by which technology is harnessed by the government. I think this was a great opportunity today to hear different experiences from both providers and users and state governments, which I think should be clear indicators that all we need to do is to take all of this empirical evidence and put it into a framework which can actually enable us in practice to achieve the scale and speed using the skills and without, in fact, any significant costs involved. That's the golden opportunity that we stand before, and I would congratulate the organizers on having focused on this particular area, which I think is truly important for us at this juncture. Thank you.